Hi again. Wanted to give some praise to this book, The Sign of the Last Days. This is the follow-up to Carl Olof Jonsson's The Gentile Times Reconsidered. This one is in collaboration with Wolfgang Herbst. So Carl Olof Jonsson, Wolfgang Herbst, Herbst. And the key word here seems to be when. The sign of the last days, when, and the subheads are, is such a sign visible worldwide in this generation? What the surprising facts of history reveal regarding claimed evidence for our day. This is published in 1987 by Commentary Press, the same that published Ray Franz's works. And here's what Herbst and Jonsson say on the title page. They quote one text, and that is Luke 21:8. This is the New Testament in modern English. Jesus Christ speaking. Be careful that you are not deceived. There will be many coming in my name, saying, I am he, and the time is very near now. Never follow men like that. And the book has 8 chapters and 3 appendixes. The chapters are Our 20th Century, Time of the End, ? Famine, Is it worse today? Chapter 3, Earthquakes and Historical Facts. 4, Pestilences, Past and Present. 5, Some Remarkable Facts about Wars. 6, Is today's increasing of lawlessness unprecedented? 7, The Myth of the Composite Sign. And 8, What will be the sign of your coming? And the appendices are correspondence with seismologists, that is, those who professionally study earthquakes. And the B appendix, coming or presence, what do the facts reveal? I.e., is it a visible coming or an invisible presence? Appendix C, finally, the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. So I wanted to read you a sample from the book. This is from page 3. This is a good sample of the method of Jonsson and Herbst and how balanced their approach is. And the subhead on page 3 is, what sign did Jesus actually give? A few days before his death, Jesus predicted the coming destruction of the Temple of Jerusalem, Matthew 24:1 and 2. Because of this prediction, some of his disciples put a couple of questions to him. Tell us, when will these things be? And what will be the sign of your coming, of the end of the age? Matthew 24:3 from the New American Standard Bible. Before actually answering these questions, Jesus gave some warnings to his disciples. Be careful that no one misleads you, returned Jesus, for many men will come in my name, saying, I am Christ, and they will mislead many. You will certainly hear of wars and rumors of wars, but don't be alarmed. Such things must indeed happen, but that is not the end. For one nation will rise in arms against another, one kingdom against another, and there will be famines and earthquakes in different parts of the world. But all this is only the beginning of the birth pangs. That particular translation is the Phillips version, the revised. And then they comment, in addition to wars, famines, and earthquakes, Jesus, in the following verses, mentions persecutions, false prophets, and increasing lawlessness. Were all these occurrences to be understood as the positive identifying signs of Christ's return and the end of the age? Or, to the contrary, did Jesus in fact warn his disciples not to let themselves be led astray by such events? Careful and discreet Bible commentators have often pointed out that Jesus nowhere identifies these events as the sign of his coming, but rather appears to warn his disciples not to draw such a conclusion when disasters or catastrophes of this kind take place. From the very start of his reply, his admonishment was, don't be misled, don't be terrified. Such things must take place, but the end is not yet. They also point out that is, these careful and discreet Bible commentators point out that the Greek word for sign at Matthew 24 verse 3 is in the singular and therefore could hardly refer to a number of different events. They have further observed that Jesus actually does not describe his return until his words in verses 27 to 31, following his prediction of the destruction of Jerusalem. Then, for the first time, he starts to talk about the sign of his coming, the sign of the Son of Man in verse 30. Here again in the singular, precisely as in verse 3. This sign, according to Jesus' words, was to appear in heaven, not on earth. The Watchtower Society admits this. They are, therefore, forced to make a distinction between the sign of the Son of Man in heaven, appearing when he comes for the final judgment, and the sign of his coming, that is the parousia, which they say is to be found in the wars, famines, pestilences, earthquakes, and so forth since 1914. In this way, they not only get two different types of signs of Christ's coming, they also have two different comings, one in 1914 and another at the Great Tribulation. However, Jesus' introductory words should evidently be understood as warnings against false conclusions. Watch out that no one deceives you. See to it that you are not alarmed. There would be wars, famines, pestilences, earthquakes, and other troubles. His followers would also have to meet hatred and persecution, not only once, but many times in the future. They would have to endure such things all the time, right up to the end. Before that, the gospel of the kingdom preached by Jesus and his disciples would reach all nations of the earth. Not until after this would the end come. After giving this general survey of future history, Jesus then began to answer the questions of the four disciples. Their question about the destruction of the temple, that is verses 15 to 22, and their question about his return and the end of the age, from verse 27 onward. End times proclaimers, as a rule, do not accept this natural understanding of Jesus' reply. Many popular expositors of the prophecies today insist on interpreting Jesus' initial words about the coming troubles not as a preliminary introduction, but as the answer to the question about the sign of his coming and the end. The Watchtower Society, for example, explains away the singular form of the Greek word for sign by saying that the sign itself consists of a number of different features. They speak of the sign as the composite sign. When all the events, wars, famines, pestilences, earthquakes, and other tribulations appear at the same time during the same generation, then we are able to discern the sign proving that Christ has come and is invisibly present. And of course, this all would have to be rewritten now. This is 1987, and I believe it has been re-edited and put out in a new edition. But they do significantly put the last generation logo, or I guess you could say graphic, that the Watchtower frequently used about one generation encompassing all of these things that they call the composite sign. This is the 1973 edition. And of course that would all have to be scrapped now, because indeed they have scrapped their definition of generation anyway. So I'd strongly suggest that everybody who's concerned to correctly interpret the sign of Christ's coming, get a hold of this book, because it masterfully goes through all of the components of this so-called composite sign, analyzing to see if indeed the Watchtower's claim has any basis, both in history and even in Bible exegesis. I'll put in a link to Carl Olof Jonsson. We've already done a video talking about the Gentile times reconsidered, so I'll put a link to that in. And also to one we did on Matthew 24 ourselves, based on the commentary of J.C. Ryle. What is this sign? Why do Jehovah's Witnesses and many more get Matthew 24 so wrong? See you soon.